Jarawa. Jarawa.
Passed down through time in the legends of countless peoples, an ominous story is told. That in the far distant past, our planet was besieged by unimaginable cataclysm, fierce windstorms, massive earthquakes, and a setting sun that rose again to change direction in the sky. We are coming to realize that these may not have been legends at all, but factual accounts serving as a premonition of the devastation we may experience in the immediate future.
Pueblo Bonito, the ruins of a once great empire. It was built many centuries ago by the Anasazi Indians, an ancient American tribe that numbered in the thousands. Like many other civilizations, both before and after, the Anasazi simply disappeared, vanished, leaving only these stone foundations as a reminder of their existence. No one really knows what happened to the Anasazi. Their disappearance is a mystery. We do know that they were a technically advanced people. They had to be in order to survive in this harsh environment. They built complex food storage and water collection systems. They had a solid understanding of mathematics and a remarkable grasp of science. And yet they're gone. History, they say, repeats itself. Today, there's a growing feeling of apprehension, an aura of impending doom that we, like the Anasazi, may become a vanished civilization. And this belief isn't limited to a scattered few. It's a growing movement encompassing millions of people from all walks of life. They point to emerging scientific theory, to the predictions of psychics, both past and present, to the prophecies of the Bible to support their conclusion that our planet is about to undergo dramatic, cataclysmic change. Change so great that it could literally mean the end of the world.
It began thousands of years ago, when men with extraordinary powers roamed the wilderness, speaking the word of God.
Ye who have forsaken the Lord our God, listen to his word.
We pay no heed to your God. Begone, trespasser.
You shall pay heed. For a day will come when the Lord Almighty will shake the heavens and the foundations of the earth. Every city will fall, every mountain will crumble, and your ungodly sanctuary will be laid waste before him.
The word of your God means nothing here. Ours are greater and much more powerful. Music.
Such a shame to waste your music on stone ears.
Speak with reverence, or you will arouse the wrath of our gods.
Then call forth their presence, that I too may feel their power.
Oh, Baal! Answer us! Asherah! Give us a sign! Show us your power!
Well, they don't answer. Perhaps they are asleep or on a journey.
Baal! Asherah! El!
Enough! Seek forgiveness from the Lord while there is still time.
Why should we seek forgiveness from your God? It appears he has abandoned you. Where's your God now?
You can destroy me, but never the truth of the words I speak. Oh! Lord God of Abraham, let it be known that thou art here with me.
A trick! He's a fake!
As this graven idol lies before you, so shall the earth break into pieces before the Lord. When these things happen and the wrath of God has come, though you shall pass away, my words shall remain forever true.
The prophets foretold the future with astonishing clarity, their prophecies recorded and passed down through the centuries. Many spoke of an end time when man would be punished for his misdeeds by a series of natural disasters. That time has not yet come.
But much of what the prophets foretold has come to pass. Overlooking the city of Jerusalem is the dome of the Rock Mosque, built on the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon. The prophet Isaiah warned that the temple would be destroyed and rebuilt. It was. Daniel prophesied that it would be destroyed a second time, and it was. The revered Wailing Wall is the only part of that temple still standing. There is a prophecy yet to be fulfilled, that of a third destruction on this site. It is written that the dome of the rock will fall in a powerful upheaval that will split the city and herald a wave of worldwide destruction. When will this occur? One man who thinks he has the answer is Chester Brooks, a church deacon who is an authority on Bible scripture. He is also a computer programmer.
Trying to understand Bible prophecy is a difficult job. You could literally spend thousands of hours tracking down references to prophesied events. I wanted to find a quicker way. So what I did was program my computer with every reference to natural catastrophes found in the Bible. Now I'm able to cross-check these references and their interpretations in a matter of seconds. For example, I could call up specific data as to the destruction of the Dome of the Rock Mosque. This will tell me every verse in the Old and New Testaments that refer to this event. There are 33 references to the Dome of the Rock destruction, and what I wanted to find out was when this was supposed to occur. The book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 11, has the most specific information. According to Daniel, the mosque will be destroyed 1,290 days after its dedication.
Now, scholars commonly interpret prophetic days as equal to our years. We know the mosque was dedicated in 692 AD, so by using simple arithmetic, we can ascertain that this destruction will occur in the near future.
If my interpretations are correct, and I believe they are, this will be the worst earthquake our world has ever experienced.
The biblical prophecies are frightening, and to some, difficult to take seriously. After all, we have never experienced a worldwide earthquake. But suppose the prophecies are true. What could trigger such an event? Perhaps the Anasazi had the answer. They and many other peoples had an almost religious obsession with the planets. They charted the heavens with uncanny accuracy, an accuracy that has only recently been surpassed. But why? Why would such a people, barely able to scratch a subsistence out of this harsh land, be so preoccupied with the planets? Did the Anasazi know something about the planets that we are only beginning to understand?
For many peoples, these were the first gods. The fleet Mercury, the messenger. Venus, the goddess of beauty. Mars, the great warrior. The greatest of the deities, the king of all gods, Jupiter. 1,300 times the size of Earth, a seething cauldron of ammonia and methane charged by electrical storms, rotating at enormous speed, its equator bulging from the stress. Jupiter, so big its mass is almost that of a star. So powerful, its immense gravitational and magnetic fields affect other astral bodies millions of miles away. Because of these fields, this giant planet, the king of ancient gods, may still hold dominion over the Earth.
This is one of the most unusual Anasazi ruins. It's called Casa Rencanada. And for years, no one could explain its function or its purpose. Archaeologists long suspected that there was some significance to its unique design. But it was only recently someone was able to decipher the code locked in these ancient walls. The key was in the windows, the number and placement of which enabled the Anasazi to calculate the cycles of the planets, the number of days it took Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, and Mars to make a complete revolution in the sky. Casa Rencanada was, in effect, an early astronomical calculator. Maurice Chatelain, a former NASA scientist and mathematician, has conducted an extensive study of Casa Rencanada.
The reason why they were so much interested in those planets is because they had noticed that every time something happened on the surface of the Earth, like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, you know, or tidal waves, it was always connected. It was synchronized with planetary conjunctions. So they wanted to try to calculate in advance when it would happen again.
If Chatelain is correct in his analysis, the Anasazi knew of a link between natural disasters on Earth and the positions of the planets.
That's affirmative. We're go.
Roger, standing by, Frank.
Okay, TP, let's get them. We have confirmation of pitch and roll program from
What's your liftoff time, Retro?
Affirmative. We're go.
This link between Jupiter, the other planets, and our Earth is just beginning to attract the attention of modern science, and for good reason. On Christmas Eve, 1982, we experienced a rare phenomenon, a conjunction of planets like those for which the Anasazi calculator was designed. Astronomers call it the Grand Alignment, and it is a subject of growing controversy and concern. There are a number of reputable scientists who believe this Grand Alignment could trigger worldwide devastation, ushering our planet into a 20-year era of cataclysm. Is this really possible? Could planets millions of miles away have such an effect on our Earth? For the answer, we must take a closer look at our planet itself. The Earth, hurtling through space at 1.3 million miles per hour, simultaneously rotating on its axis and orbiting around the sun while our entire solar system speeds through the universe. The surface of the Earth is also in motion. The crust is divided into 12 huge sections called tectonic plates. These plates are constantly in motion, and they carry the continents with them. Their movement is far from peaceful. The plates butt against each other, bumping and grinding along. Their combined forces have caused entire mountain ranges to form. This is the scar left by two plates locked in eternal confrontation. San Andreas Fault. It extends for 600 miles, separating much of California from the rest of the United States. The Pacific Plate, carrying California on its back, is moving in a northwesterly direction, building up stress as it grips the North American Plate. From time to time, this stress becomes too great and the plates wrench free. This is what we call an earthquake. Its source is deep inside the Earth, where these plates float on the molten core. Rock so hot it is turned to liquid. The plates usually creep along, their movement unnoticed at the surface. Suddenly, unpredictably, they could accelerate and lunge forward. Such severe movement could cause earthquakes of unprecedented intensity. What influences the movement of these plates? We spoke to Dr. Jeffrey Goodman, a geologist, and author of the book, We Are the Earthquake Generation.
Abnormal movement of the tectonic plates seems to be related to changes in the Earth's rate of rotation. As the Earth goes about its daily rotation, there seems to be periods of time when it either speeds up or slows down. It's like the principle of inertia. You can be driving along in your car and then suddenly apply the brakes and everything is pitched forward. And the Earth's plates are like the passengers in the car as it rides on the Earth's surface.
But what causes these changes in the Earth's rotation? Dr. Stephen Plogman, co-author of The Jupiter Effect, has studied the effects of external forces on our planet.
In 1979, 800,000 people were killed in China in a disastrous earthquake. In 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted, devastated hundreds of square miles of land, and killed dozens of people. Both of these disasters occurred during times of solar maximum. Now, during this time, the sun spewed forth particles and radiation, which impinged upon the Earth and altered the normal weather patterns, and in turn accelerated and decelerated the Earth's rotation. And this, in turn, triggered earthquakes and violent volcanic activity.
Sunspots and solar flares, gigantic eruptions on the sun's surface that shower the Earth with charged particle radiation, adversely affecting our planet's climate, disrupting radio signals, and, as we are just beginning to learn, altering the Earth's rate of spin.
Recently, we have shown that the planets exert on the sun gravitational and inertial forces due to their rotation about the sun. Now, Jupiter follows an 11-year period around the sun. The solar activity follows an 11-year period around the sun. And at this moment, the planets like Saturn, Uranus, Neptune are in a grand alignment with Jupiter, which compounds this effect.
Christmas, 1982. 8 planets align on one side of the sun, coming together in their closest proximity in almost 200 years. We know that this will cause a severe increase in sunspots, and we know that sunspots can cause earthquakes.
How many, how severe? It's anybody's guess. All we know for certain is that no civilization on Earth has ever been so vulnerable.
The cities, massive cathedrals of concrete, glass, steel, and people. People packed as many as 10,000 per square mile. Man's cities may be monuments to his dominion over the earth, but they may also be the key to his demise. Tokyo, a city on an island. There is no more room to spread outward, so the city must spread upward. And the likelihood of disaster grows ever greater. 12 million people live and work here, even though the islands of Japan sit upon a geologic time bomb, the juncture of 2 massive crustal plates. When one of the plates gives, the entire country might sink. The last great quake here in 1923 left almost 100,000 dead, and the entire country's population was only 6/10 of what it is today. New York City. Contrary to popular belief, it is not built on solid rock. 7 faults slash through Manhattan. The largest cuts completely across the island at 14th Street. Cracks in walls, pipes, foundations. Clues that the earth is coming alive. Will the grand alignment trigger these faults into greater activity? 8 million people here are about to find out. Los Angeles, perhaps the most vulnerable city of all. Sprawled across a plain riddled with faults and only a few miles west of the ominous San Andreas. This is truly a city on the brink of disaster.
Any day now, Central to Southern California is going to be hit by a massive, horrendous earthquake.
Peter Franken was director of Advanced Projects Research Agency for the Pentagon.
If it should be centered near Los Angeles behind me here, it will take out that city. Now, what do we mean by take out? If it happens during a working day, it means 100,000 or more people promptly killed. It means 1 million or more dreadfully grotesque injuries, almost certain to result in death. It means uncontrollable fires, failure of electricity, subsequent spoilage of food, plague-like diseases, and we are in a country utterly inequipped at the present time to deal with a catastrophe of those proportions in any way, shape, or form.
And yet here, and in many other endangered cities, life goes on as usual, or at least seems to. This might look like your neighborhood bookstore, but look closely. These aren't ordinary books. These are survival manuals, pamphlets, magazines, and paperbacks on everything from self-defense and food storage to building a fortified bunker. They also carry supplies, dehydrated food, first aid kits, camouflage gear, and weapons.
Our customers are just middle-class individuals that are concerned, people that want to be prepared for whatever situation that is coming. I don't think they're crazies. I think they're smart. The individual that sits by and says, well, what will be, is not a smart individual.
The real horror of this is that we are not prepared. Today, in the Los Angeles area, or New York, or any area, 100 severely burned or injured people would saturate our ability to care for them properly. When we begin to think in terms of 100,000 or 500,000 or 1 million grotesquely burned, injured, damaged people without blood supplies, without operating hospitals, without adequate medical help of any form, you begin to see the dimensions of the horror. It isn't all over as a terrible statistic in 10 minutes. It lingers for weeks. Dead and dying people are not much fun to watch, especially when they're your own, or your own children, or your own friends, and your own neighbors.
We're all concerned with the coming disasters. None of us know where we're going to be. Some of us do not know how to defend ourselves in an emergency. And I don't think things are getting better, so I think it's really right to be a survivalist. I wish more people would be. Then I wouldn't have to think about feeding them and worrying if they're going to kill me because they didn't put their food away.
This is what the educated survivalist needs to know.
I think the non-survivalist is probably the most dangerous person in the country, and there's a lot of them. Because God knows what he's going to do when he runs out. What's he going to do when he runs out of food and he runs out of water? What's he going to do? Is he going to let his family starve?
In what looks like a typical middle-class neighborhood, survivalism has taken on a new dimension. It's called the Skllful community, and it's located 60 miles south of Chicago. The residents of Skllful look ordinary enough, and they are, with one exception. Everyone here is convinced that the world is about to come to an end.
Over the next 20 years, basically, we are expecting that there will be an increase in the number of earthquakes that occur around the globe, as well as an increase in volcanic activity. And that will gradually...
Tim Wilhelm is a former Ohio schoolteacher who now heads the Skllful community's Office of Technology.
Also, along with seismic activity, we also are expecting probable changes in climate as well as accompanying economic problems that would be worldwide.
But Skll is prepared. Its population is only 125, but it has its own water purification plant, a facility that uses corn, which they grow, to produce ethanol, a substitute for gasoline, and a manufacturing plant, enabling Skll to be almost completely self-sufficient. Their most precious resource, the children. Skll's future brain trust. From the moment of birth, these children receive individualized training that will prepare them to be the leaders of Skll's future civilization. All of above average intelligence, they can read by the age of 3. They write at 4. But what will they do when the end comes? That too falls within the master plan. The entire Skll community is preparing for an airborne evacuation. By 1999, they will design and build 2,000 to 3,000 airships, which will carry Skll's residents above the Earth, where they will hover until it is safe to return. Then they will build a new community, which they will call Philadelphia.
The reason we are taking the steps we're taking to deal with what we see, again, as a probable future, is that if it does happen and no one takes steps to survive or carry through this event, man will basically revert to a Stone Age existence.
While some seek a passive retreat from the coming cataclysm, others prepare to meet disaster head-on.
Soldiers!
These are not U.S. infantrymen. They are soldiers of God, rehearsing for their self-ordained role in maintaining order in the chaotic world to come. They number more than 100, and with their families have established the community of Zarephath Horeb, a crude settlement hidden in the backwoods of the Ozarks.
Hi, I'm Jim Ellison, and this is the CSA Zarephath Horeb community. God sent us here 6, 7 years ago to establish a place of refuge for his people during the times of trouble that are coming, and I'd like to take you on a tour. This is our newly completed communications building. We've got it almost ready. We're going to put radios and different kinds of communications equipment in there so that we'll be able to communicate with other people after the collapse. We put this tower up to put the antenna on and also for a point of observation because it's the highest point in the community. As you can see, we've cleared back 250 yards all the way around the perimeter for defensive purposes in case we're attacked. This is one of our fortified houses on the perimeter of our settlement. We have the lower part of masonry type construction, and it has vision slits for firing out of if we were attacked. This is the place to hit, right here. The head, the upper torso, the sternum, in this area here. The person will go down immediately.
Go! Quick, quick, quick! Quick, quick, quick!
The residents of Zarephath Horeb are not the only ones who see combat readiness as a key to survival. Thousands of ordinary citizens spend weekends practicing military maneuvers.
Survivalists are a very contented type of people because they've always figured out what they're going to do if this happens. The person who doesn't deal with those, he knows things are insecure and he knows he couldn't do anything about it if something happened. People get mad at you about being survivalists because, one, you're reminding them of things that they don't want to think about, and two, I think you're reminding them that they haven't done anything about it.
How are you doing?
Good. I understand you have a vehicle for sale.
Yeah, we've got a vehicle for sale. What do you need?
Others need even greater protection.
Well, we've got an all-terrain vehicle here. Just a thing for anything you want.
Well, what can I use it for?
Well, we use it for fishing in the river. It's a fully amphibious cargo carrier. Carry 12 people in the back, 2 people in the front. Basically, the thing will go anywhere. Go through the mud, go on the water, go over snow. You wouldn't have any trouble at all finding a parking space downtown.
Yeah, right. What was that used for service-wise?
It's a 1953 Pontiac. Pontiac built them originally, believe it or not. It was used during the Korean War, and they used them in Vietnam for amphibious landings, carrying cargo and insertion.
What kind of gas mileage you get on the thing?
You get 3 miles to a gallon.
Does the machine gun work?
No, that's just a replica, but if you want to, we'll sell you a real one.
Yeah, I like that.
A lot of people think we have a lot different outlook than they do. Really, the only difference is that we have a mission from God. He set us aside for this purpose, and this is our whole purpose in being here. All of what we're doing is to prepare for what's coming, and we're just trying to establish this refuge for God's people during this time of trouble. For 6,000 years, the misrule of man has corrupted the earth. And God is about at this time to bring in his kingdom, wherein righteousness shall reign. And as the Scripture has said, the righteous shall tread on the ashes of the wicked. Amen. I believe that this is a true promise and a true saying. So just because you've been called, don't stop. Just because you feel that you're in the chosen, don't stop. But continue on and be found faithful in the Lord.
Some might accuse the residents of Zarephath Horeb of being extremists, radicals, even fanatics. But can you really blame them? Nearly the same sentiment is being echoed in houses of worship around the world.
I'm going to tell you that I used to think this was all bunk. But I have done some research, and I have come to see that the Bible does speak, and quite candidly, about the signs that are sure enough signs of the end of the world. Number one, the first thing that took place, he predicted it, the destruction of the temple. Sign number one, the end is coming. The second thing Jesus said to watch for is false messiahs. False messiahs. A sign of the end of the times. There are more false messiahs today right here in Los Angeles. People who say they are the chosen one. False messiahs. The end is coming. The third sign, Jesus said, increase of wars and rumors of wars. Wars and rumors of wars. ABC this week had a report on the great rumor of war that is in Europe. And the quote is this: everyone in Europe is convinced that a war is about to begin, and the arena will once again be Europe. The fulfillment of that is in our very presence. Then Jesus said something else. There shall be famines. It is a fact that 60% of the population of this world goes to bed hungry every night. The authorities tell us that 90% of the people of this earth will go to bed hungry in the year 2000. Another thing Jesus said would take place: earthquakes in unusual places. Earthquakes in places where you never thought there would be earthquakes. Last week there was an earthquake in New Hampshire. Strange places are having earthquakes that never had them before. And then Matthew 24:12, and because iniquity shall abound, the rise in crime. We're becoming an armed camp, and everybody is afraid, terrified. If you don't believe it, the security alarm system business has quadrupled in the last 3 years. Tremendous worry. The whole world is sensing the rise of iniquity. And that's just what Jesus said would happen. Now, let me tell you something. I believe that the signs of the ends of the world are all around us. I believe they have all been fulfilled, that it's all coming to a close. A French minister said one time, men will be in the streets, in busy commerce, Men will be in the shops, keeping their books and selling their wares. Children will be playing in the school grounds. And all of a sudden, the clouds will open, and the Christ of God will step and tower over the nations of business. And he'll say, "Gentlemen, it's closing time. It's closing time."
And I will give portents in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. And the ground clave asunder that was under them, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men. The fact of the earth shall quake at my presence, and the mountains shall be thrown down. The cliff shall fall, and every wall shall tumble to the ground.
The 1980s have dawned with a sweeping worldwide increase in violent geologic activity and extreme weather conditions, a cycle of destruction that could lead to greater and greater devastation in the years ahead. How severe will it be? Scientists are reluctant to make specific predictions, but some individuals possess startling visions of what the future holds.
I do see dramatic changes in the Earth in the next 20 years.
Her name is Clarissa Bernhardt. They call her the Earthquake Lady. She has predicted with uncanny accuracy the times, locations, and magnitudes of more than 30 earthquakes throughout the world.
I see the San Francisco Bay becoming an inland sea. And up and down the west coast, a lot of volcanoes becoming active again. Flurries of earthquakes, of course, which do accompany volcanic activity. The east coast will have changes also, but I see more in the western part as being the most dramatic by the turn of the century. The rest of the world will find there is increased activity. There'll be earthquakes in places that have not been earthquakes before.
Clarissa Bernhardt is not alone. Dozens of psychics alive today, many of those whose predictions were recorded in the past, share visions of major Earth disturbances beginning in the early 1980s and continuing to the end of the century. This is what they see.
Beginning shortly after the Grand Alignment, psychics see a flurry of earthquake activity throughout the world, in the United States, Japan, the Middle East, and China. The results will be devastating. Nearly half of California will be reclaimed by the sea. Tidal waves will sweep through India and major portions of the Far East. Earthquake and volcano-related catastrophes will continue for many years. One clairvoyant has seen more than 400 million people wiped out by the year 1990. Plague and famine will become worldwide occurrences. Hellish temperatures will persist for months on end. And the winters will be worse. Record-breaking sub-zero temperatures and Arctic-like blizzards will immobilize cities for months at a time. The harsh winters of the early 1980s will seem mild by comparison.
Psychics presented a very terrifying picture of the future. They talked about how over the next 20 or 30 years, the Earth would be hit by a number of repeated volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tidal waves set in motion. It was really horrifying what they were portraying. I was very doubtful about the whole thing, but when I started to look at the information in the various areas they had singled out, when I started to look at the geological maps, the tectonic maps, the heat flow maps, I was very surprised at the number of matchups and the number of things that said these areas were threatened areas, were weak areas, and had the potential of this kind of change.
This is the world as we know it today. And this, according to the psychics, is what will be left of the world after the first decade of cataclysm that will end in the early 1990s. The Great Lakes have swelled into a new ocean. Major portions of Japan lost to the sea. As well as parts of Ireland and England. The west coast of the United States is the most severely ravaged, much of it lost to the sea. Psychics say major earthquakes will have struck in more than 25 different places. And yet, this is only the beginning, a prelude to the greater disaster predicted to follow.
By the year 2000, the psychics predicted what would be called the ultimate disaster. They talked about how earthquakes and volcanic eruptions would occur almost on a daily basis, how the magnitude of these events would be the biggest ever recorded by man. They were talking about earthquakes that would literally be 9 and 10 on the Richter scale, something that even no one could possibly imagine at this point in time. The amount of energy would be equivalent to tens of thousands of atom bombs from any one single event.
Let's look at this thing. 9 and 10-point earthquakes. What does this really mean? The earthquake that leveled San Francisco in 1906 registered 8.3 on the Richter scale. A magnitude of 10 points is generally considered the top of the Richter scale. That would be a quake with about 100 times as much energy as the San Francisco quake. A 12-point earthquake would release nearly 10,000 times the energy of that quake. And these technicians are about to simulate one.
Program loaded?
Ready to go.
No one, at least in recent history, has experienced a 10-point earthquake. This 12-point simulation will be a first.
terrifying. But you'll never experience it. You see, no one would survive a 10-point quake. And yet, according to ancient legends, our planet has experienced similar devastation several times in its past.
In the past, there were 3 worlds. And each one of these worlds was destroyed by major changes.
Sun Bear, a Chippewa Indian, is a modern-day medicine man. He travels the American Southwest teaching Indians their tribal history.
One was destroyed when the volcanoes erupted upon it, and the second world was destroyed when the poles shifted and great sheets of ice come over the earth. The third world was destroyed by earthquakes and by destruction as great waters come up on the earth. This is what we see, and it coincides with all of the prophecies of the native people.
The Indians are not alone in their belief in world ages. Egyptian hieroglyphics, Aztec and Mayan legends, and the religious scriptures of many faiths all recorded periods of great destruction, cities sinking into the sea, incredible earthquakes and volcanoes, followed by the sun changing direction in the sky. And of course, the great flood of Noah. Are these merely legends?
If these events actually occurred, everyone on Earth would have experienced them at once. So every culture would have recorded them at the same time. But the dates attributed to these events were not the same. So the ancient records were largely dismissed. Until recently.
Dr. Immanuel Velikovsky is best known for his controversial theories about the Earth's evolution. But Velikovsky also developed new techniques for dating historical events. He found certain events, the Great Flood is one example, that appeared in the legends of many peoples, but recorded at different points in time. So Velikovsky looked not at the events themselves, but at the dates and the methods used to calculate them. He discovered errors in the techniques that had long been used to interpret ancient calendars. And making simple corrections, he discovered an amazing correlation between the histories of these many ancient peoples. The dates of the catastrophic events did match up, and Velikovsky was convinced that these events not only took place, but also dramatically changed the face of the Earth at several points in its past.
This was called the theory of catastrophic evolution. It was scoffed at by scientists who for hundreds of years had believed that the Earth evolved through slow, gradual change. They wanted solid proof, physical evidence. But some men saw validity in Dr. Velikovsky's theories. They set out to find traces of civilizations that were destroyed by cataclysm. For a period, they came up cold. Then, in desperation, they turned to a psychic with an impressive track record for locating missing people and objects.
His name is Alex Tanis, and he has astounded science with his extrasensory abilities.
So we went into the Bermuda Triangle to find this evidence. I did an out-of-body experience. This means that I am able to separate myself, and a part of me went down below the ocean and swam and found a beautiful lost city. This city was so beautiful. It had roads made of white marble. It had buildings which I could not describe. I saw temples, and I saw columns, stairways which existed, which I had never seen before. The whole thing was just amazing to see.
A lot of people didn't take Alex Tanis seriously until teams of divers actually began to cite these ruins. They found a 1,000-yard long wall of giant stone blocks, now called the Bimini Road, dozens of archways and columns found several miles off the coast of the Bahamas, and a magnificent curved stairway that disappeared into the depths of the ocean. How are we doing, Captain?
Very close, Mr. Kennedy.
Tanner's accuracy was remarkable. But his most extraordinary find was confirmed here, 40 miles off the coast of Florida. Several hundred feet below the surface, Tanner saw what he claimed was a pyramid-shaped structure. He said that it was man-made, and that the top wasn't pointed but flat, possibly to support a temple or an observatory. I think we're here now. Amazing. Can we get a better view?
We can look at a video playback.
This could be the most extensive underwater ruin ever discovered. It's safe to assume that these structures weren't built underwater. So what else, other than a major cataclysmic event, could account for their being here? A number of theories have been proposed, but only one also explains the ancient legends in which the sun mysteriously rose in the opposite side of the sky, a theory proposed by Dr. Velikovsky himself.
What he said was ridiculed, even attacked by his colleagues. But when you stop to think about it, it really makes a lot of sense. This is what I mean.
Dr. Byron Randall is a leading expert on the work of Dr. Velikovsky.
The Earth normally rotates something like this. But Dr. Velikovsky proposed that several times during Earth's history, there was a dramatic change in the axis of its rotation, a pole shift. In a very brief period of time, a matter of days, perhaps even hours, the Earth literally turned over in space.
Is that what the legends were describing, a planet that toppled in space? Since we know the Earth couldn't possibly do this, we might seek some other more plausible explanation, if it weren't for some remarkable evidence now acknowledged by science. At the Pisgah lava beds near Barstow, California, geologist Carl Lofstrom conducts research that reveals startling information about our planet's history.
For hundreds of years, navigators and explorers have used a simple device to find their way through the world, the compass. It works on a very basic principle, a magnetized needle that always points to the north. Now, one might assume that compasses would always have pointed to the north, but they haven't. And this lava bed proves it. By studying lava samples, what we've learned is that the north and south poles were not always where they are today. In other words, if there were such a thing as a compass thousands of years ago, it would have pointed in another direction.
Петр. Что? Пойдемте, пойдем с нами. Оно огромное и совершенно покрыто льдом. Да ты с ума сошел? Да не думай о холоде. Я обещаю, что наши усилия оправдаются.
Ну ладно, ладно.
A shift in polarity is not necessarily the result of a shift of the Earth's axis. There are other possible explanations. But discoveries, like the one in Siberia a century ago, are otherwise much more difficult to explain.
Я начинаю вставать. Торопитесь, не то стемнеет. Я не знаю. О, Клосс! Чего вы ждете? Пойди там, Петр, постарайся возьмем. Какое твердое. Смотрите! Я нашел ногу! Довольно, лучше пойдем и переведем начальство.
It was a completely preserved mammoth, dead for more than 15,000 years, frozen while still standing. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. When the animal had been completely uncovered, scientists found the remains of partially chewed flowers in its mouth, vegetation of a tropical variety now found several thousand miles to the south. To date, the remains of more than 40 mammoths have been found here in an environment where they clearly did not belong. One possible explanation: the animals had been flash frozen as the Earth turned over in space, carrying them and their surroundings into an instant ice age. John White, author of Pole Shift, is a leading authority on this phenomenon.
What would happen during a pole shift? We could describe it as global cataclysm. First of all, as the Earth suddenly lurched in space, the oceans would spill out of their basins and overrun the land masses in tidal waves many hundreds of feet high. Also, as the Earth were suddenly tumbling through space, it would create the effect of hurricane winds many hundreds of miles per hour. There would be earthquakes greater than have ever been measured before. There would be instant change of geography, too, as land masses were submerged and new ones rose. Volcanoes around the Earth would explode. Huge lava sheets would pour out across the land masses, and the air would be filled with poisonous gas and ash. Climatic zones would change instantaneously because the Earth would suddenly alter its position in space. And last of all, there would be widespread loss of human life and destruction of civilization, with all signs of human existence hidden beneath thick layers of debris and muck or buried at the bottom of newly formed seas.
Some people believe that pole shifts were responsible for the Great Flood, the sinking of Atlantis, and many other unexplained events. According to psychic predictions, Bible prophecy, and Indian beliefs, the Earth is about to topple again.
The Earth is our mother, and today we see major changes coming upon the Earth. We see the prophecies of our people coming to fulfillment. And the signs that would tell them of these changes coming would be when the white man would put a house in the sky. This was Skylab that went up in 1973. And then they said the eagle would walk on the moon. And when the space flight was successful to the moon, we knew that then these signs were the signs that the changes were coming on the Earth Mother. The time of major change and destruction that would cleanse the Earth was upon us.
The psychic said as the frequency of earthquakes became increased, as the volcanic eruptions got larger and larger, we'd be heading towards the main event, the culminating event. Edgar Cayce talked about how then the poles would shift. We would have a pole shift. And psychics from Nostradamus to present-day types have all emphasized this. They've talked about how this was going to happen in the immediate future, how to this generation it would occur.
I have made many predictions in my life, but I've only had one vision which came to me in 1969. The world is to plunge into 3 days of darkness, and it will happen soon. I was frightened and confused because I could not explain this. I began to do scientific research and found that there is a possibility of a pole shift. Now, I have an explanation for my vision, and I know it will happen soon.
The idea of a pole shift occurring in our immediate future seems totally incomprehensible. And yet there is scientific evidence that our planet is in fact headed on such a course.
The Earth appears to be very steady in its movements. There's the daily rotation, there's the periodic tilting of the axis, but in the early 1900s, scientists discovered that there was an actual wobble to the movement of the axis. They call this the Chandler wobble. It's akin to a top that starts to slow down in its rotation, and the movement gets very helter-skelter. Right now, we're at a point in time that this wobble is on an increase, a very dramatic increase. And you know, when a top starts to get too much of a wobble to it, it falls over.
What force is causing this increased wobble? The answer lies here, in the frozen waste of Antarctica.
Admiral Byrd's first expedition to the South Pole focused the world's attention on this continent of ice. For the first time, scientists studied closely this harsh new environment. The links to the outside world were these 110-foot-tall radio towers, built to withstand the most severe climatic conditions. Byrd thought he was the first one to see this spot. He was wrong. Men had been here before, and what they saw was much different than this. This early 16th century map was drawn for a Turkish navigator named Piri Reis, who claimed it was drafted from ancient charts so old no one knew who mapped them. And that's only the beginning of this mystery.
According to official history, Antarctica wasn't discovered until 1820, several hundred years after these maps were drawn. What's even more remarkable is the fact that they showed mountain ranges and apparent riverbeds. These topographical details match closely with the features of Antarctica mapped only this century by scientists who use seismic soundings, which is really the only way to see through the ice sheet, which is thousands of feet thick.
How did they get such an accurate map? The only answer is that someone had been to the Antarctic before it was covered with ice. If this is the case, then that map may very well have been charted shortly after the last pole shift, before the ice began to accumulate. Since that time, the ice has been building at a rate some scientists consider alarming.
In recent years, scientists from many countries have undertaken a comprehensive study of the Antarctic continent. Seismographic soundings bounce shock waves off solid ground thousands of feet beneath the snow, giving an accurate profile of the contour and depth of the ground below the ice. The amount of ice here is difficult to comprehend. 90% of the Earth's fresh water is locked in this frozen wasteland. That ice is growing at a truly staggering rate. 2.5 billion tons of new ice every day. Admiral Byrd's radio towers have long since been completely covered by the rampant ice.
This evidence seems to fit an incredible theory, that every 7,000 to 10,000 years, the ice buildup at one of the poles is so great that it becomes the force that causes our planet to topple. But what mechanism could set all this in motion?
A very large earthquake or series of earthquakes occurring at just the right point in time could cause a flip. It would be the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And we already know that earthquakes 7.5 on the Richter scale or larger cause the Earth's axis to shift, to jiggle in space. And so an even larger earthquake could be the trigger. If the earthquake occurred at a point in time when the Earth's balance was already jeopardized by an unusual buildup of ice and snow at the poles, we could have an event like this happening. And psychics see just this kind of earthquake occurring in the year 2000.
I usually feel very reluctant to give a date for my vision. But I feel so strongly about the year 2000 that I need to make this date known. The year 2000 is a year of transition and change in civilization brought about by a warning. It is unfortunate that this warning will be realized through destruction and death.
That probable future is that on or near the date of May 5th in the year 2000, there will be some sort of a major geological catastrophe that is global in nature.
It is very clear there will be a second quake, one much more severe than the first. According to the scriptures, this earthquake will leave no mountain standing and will completely obliterate the earth as we know it.
These people knew from their history that there had been pole shifts in the past. So they made their calculations and they found out that there could very well be a pole shift in the year 2000.
The end of this century, or the year 2000, is significant because nearly all the sources indicate that is when the planet will undergo a pole shift.
Whether by pole shift or other natural catastrophe, a large number of people all point to the year 2000 when our planet will face the ultimate cataclysm. But why that year? For the answer, we must once again look to the skies. Following their rendezvous in late 1982, the planets will have continued to speed through the heavens, the great magnetic and gravitational forces of Jupiter becoming less and less influential. And then, May 5th, 2000. Jupiter returns. This time with a companion, Saturn. These two giants will align in a super conjunction, meeting Mars and Mercury in a straight line beyond the Sun. This menacing alignment will exert far more gravitational pull and has a potential for catastrophe much greater than the alignment of 1982.
The time is coming when all these things you are admiring will be knocked down, and not one stone will be left on top of another. All will become one vast heap of rubble. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be great earthquakes and famines in many lands, and epidemics, and terrifying things happening in the heavens. Then there will be strange events in the skies, warnings, evil omens and portents in the sun, moon, and stars. And down here on earth, the nations will be in turmoil, perplexed by the roaring seas and strange tides. Then the peoples of the earth shall see me, the Messiah, coming in a cloud with power and great glory. So when all these things begin to happen, stand straight and look up, for your salvation is near.
Whatever is left after the devastation from the grand alignment of the 1980s faces an even greater threat posed by the planetary conjunction in the year 2000. The threat of a super quake. The threat of an off-balance Earth toppling on its axis, thrusting us into an instant ice age. The threat of a completely devastated planet. The Bible prophesied it. Science confirmed it. Now all we can do is wait.